Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the AAPI Leadership Lab, brought to you by NAP Las Vegas. Boom. And today we have a very special guest with us, Chef Rodney Ignacio. He is the owner and operator of the Fork You food truck, also of Iron Rose Personal Chef Services. And you service the Las Vegas area, is that right? Or you also do other parts?
You know what? It varies. It depends on the client. We of course all of Las Vegas, all of Nevada. If a client says they want me in California or Utah or you know Colorado.
You're there. Nice. Well, thanks for joining us today, and we're going to just jump right in. So, tell us a little bit about you. Where did you grow up? What schools did you go to? What was life like growing up for Rodney?
Life of growing up as Rodney. Well, first off, of course, I grew up in California. My family are from Hawaii. Filipino. My dad is Filipino, but he also has Chinese, Japanese in his blood as well. We always said we're Hawaiian, and then of course when you get older, you're like, oh, I'm Filipino. You know what I mean? So Hawaii is a mixture of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So mostly California is where I grew up. I did have some time in Hawaii. My life growing up, I was a rascal. My mom called me Rascal. That was my nickname. It stuck for the longest time. I have a dog that's named Rascal. I was into everything, sports, running amok around the household. Um, there wasn't one thing that I didn't do, if it was bad or good, that I did everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I gave my mom gray hairs when she was young. Um,
And what part of California did you grow up in? Was it like super diverse? Was it like one note? What area did you grow up? And what was it like?
so I grew up in Southern California, Glendale, South Pasadena, Los Angeles area, and then of course the high desert area. Um, that is crazy when you think about growing up in the high desert and being um, in a town that is doesn't have a lot of Asian, background. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so, but that was more later when I started getting older and everything. And then when you start to drive, you can go all over California. So that's where I grew up mostly.
Yeah. And so what was it like? Like, who did you mostly hang out with? And then also, I want to get into high school because we shared a high school passion. Um, but yeah, how was it growing up? Like, what was it with your friends? What did you do as a kid?
I rode my bike a lot, almost
Hmm.
like Forrest Gump running, everywhere, right? In the United States in the movies, right? So it didn't matter where I rode my bike everywhere. And then I was into skateboarding, so I skateboarded a lot. So not only did I have friends that were into riding bikes and BMX and doing tricks, but also had, friends that were skaters and all that stuff. So I grew up doing that. I had,
Yeah.
what do you call it? Oh man, we did everything from playing football, you know what I mean, and soccer and extreme sports, skiing, you know what I mean. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, there wasn't anything that I did and who I hung up with. I hung out with you know Filipinos. I hung out with just different everybody really. It didn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had a similar, I was teasing at it, but similar passions. I mean, I loved all those things. I was a skater kid too. But you're a DJ also in high school, right? How did you get into that?
So the last conversation that we had, so I got into it, when I was in junior high school. A friend of mine that became my best friend and became a producer in the music world. I'm still producing now. Um, it's funny because he was in the band. He was a band leader. I was in the band. We had different class schedules, and I was up and coming, ended up becoming one of the band leaders as well. we ended up meeting because at the end of the school year, um, somebody had broke into my locker and took my clarinet. And of course, I was panicking. He seen that I was panicking. I ended up missing the bus. His mom was coming to pick him up. He had asked me if I needed a ride home, and I said, "Yeah, sure." So he gave me a ride home. I invited him into the house, and then of course, what's he see in the living room? He says he sees big Cern Vega 15-inch speakers and subwoofers, basically taking over the whole entire living room with two turntables and a mixer. And that was because my brother was into everything as well. He ended up having a bunch of equipment and bought a bunch of professional DJ equipment, Technic 1200s and all that stuff. And then I had no idea, what it was. I used to just play some records and all that stuff, and didn't know how to scratch and all that stuff. And what's he do? He gets on there and starts to scratch and, blend the music. And from there, I end up getting together with him, going to his house, seeing that he has equipment. Of course, he wasn't all mine because I had the best stuff. I even had lights, helicopters and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and lasers and everything. I had no idea that was a thing. And that's how I got into it, from him. And we started going down and buying records and buying 2, 3, 4 records of the same thing. Like, what am I doing buying the same record? You know what I mean?
Your doubles.
So we were doing doubles, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And then before you know it, we start adding more turntables to what I have. And, I think by the time I was done DJing, I had 6 turntables. I had, I don't know, I probably exaggerating, probably maybe $100,000 worth of just, equipment,
Yeah.
in the house itself. And I remember there was over 20 cases of records. That's how crazy it was. So that's what.
Yeah. Do you still have any of that? I mean, I still have all mine. I had 4 turns. I saved 2 of them, my 1200s, and I still have like about 1,000 records.
I hate myself for getting rid of it. I became an adult, and that became, when you become an adult and you got to work on your own and all that stuff and make your own money. Um, I didn't have time for it, and then I didn't have the space for it. I ended up selling it for absolutely nothing, and I hate myself for it because you see how expensive a Technique 1200 costs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the old school stuff is not the same anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The way they'll make it now, they don't make it like they did back then.
No, definitely. But man, I still miss it. The funny part about it is there's a place in Vegas called Limelight, which is
Limelight Records. Yeah.
So the owner is, his daughter grew up with my daughter, and I didn't know that he was the owner of it. And I remember going in there, I don't know, maybe like 15 years ago. I'm still able to do all kinds of stuff. You know what I mean?
We see blending, doing some crabs.
Yeah.
Some flares.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, cool. We can talk just that's probably a separate podcast. We can talk about that stuff. But let's talk about now how you transitioned into starting your own business and getting in the cooking industry. Because when we talked before, it was all about art, right? Like even your teacher said for you to like quit your job and take up art. But what was that turning point? So you were doing great as art, but what made you go into the culinary field?
It wasn't because my parents were chefs. My dad being a baker, my mom being a chef. It wasn't because of that. Um, I think my dad and my mom knew I was good at it. You know what I mean? Because
Mm-hmm.
I was always in the kitchen, always in the bakery, um, always making my own meals. Because mom would make, adobo and everything you can think of that's Filipino or Hawaiian or whatnot, and come home from school and there's food ready for you, or there's the making of food ready for you, and all you had to do was finish it up or whatever. And I ended up taking a full time job. Well, not a full time job. I didn't take a part time job because back in the high school you couldn't work full time, right? And
Mm.
they had restrictions of what
Labor laws. Yep.
the owner didn't follow the labor laws. You know, I would be there late night at 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and then go to school, 6 o'clock in the morning. Um, I fell in love with it. I was washing dishes and used to make fun of the cooks, like, oh, I can do that. And the head chef, was very like, this is my kitchen, don't tease my guys, you know what I mean? Go wash your dishes and all that stuff. And one day they didn't have a cook. He was stressing, the place is busy, and he says, Ignacio, come on the line. You show you how to do, this corner. And he said, you think you can handle it? And I said, just show me what you want me to do. He showed me. Before you know it, a year later, I was basically the lead cook on the line. You know what I
Nice.
mean? In high school at that. So that's how I got into um, professional cooking, and not the part where my parents, showed me,
Mm.
because they showed me a lot of professionalism and the right way to do stuff in their world.
Yeah.
But to actually make my own money and do it, that's how I got into that. Um, yeah,
Yeah. And then what inspired you? So let's fast forward a little bit because that's a crazy journey. Like a lot of things you've done in the cooking world and in the art and DJ. And if I don't get me wrong, you were throwing parties in the same time, right?
yeah,
Like throwing weekend parties, making flyers. Like I was doing that stuff too, but you were working part time as a cook according to whatever the owner labor laws were. But you were throwing parties too, right?
yeah. I was throwing crazy amounts of parties, you know, to it was looking back. I think it was like two parties a week,
Wow.
plus what do you call it? That's Friday, Saturday nights. Plus, I was taking art classes and all that stuff, which I was excelled in art for the longest. When I was younger, I used to draw and all that stuff. I can look at something and remember, and do it, and make something really good out of it. So art was my love. That's what I thought I was going to go to school for and everything. I ended up not going to school for that, but I ended up putting that into my cooking. When I was DJing back in the days, there's no media, there's no cell phones. I mean, we had a pager. We couldn't afford a cell phone because cell phones were like a big brick. It was, it's, I don't know,
It's like a suitcase
it's like a
back then.
suitcase, right? With this big wire antenna. It's crazy. But so back in the days, we used to make our own flyers. And so I was the one that would make the flyers and everything. And, we'd have our name, Audio Alert Production, you know what I mean? You know, we're not a legit company, but that was our name, and then had DJ Wiz, which was my name, and then my buddy, I forget exactly what his DJ name was, and then we had MCs and dancers, and you know, the day, the time where it's going to be located at, and all that stuff. We used to sit there and dodge the cops. You know what I mean? When the cops would come to a party because they raid, and there's, a couple hundreds of people in a house, you know what I mean? Or, disturbance, you know what I mean? Because of the music being too loud, or people getting crazy and getting drunk or whatnot. Um, and then, of course, back in those days, there was such thing as Bloods and Crips. You know what I mean? Not that there's no Bloods and Crips now, but it wasn't as crazy now than it was then over there. Then, right?
Mhm.
Remember, I mean, you were red, everybody thought you were blood. If you were, blue, everybody thought you were a crip. And sometimes the gang members would come, to these parties, you know what I mean, and cause a problem with, whoever they wanted to cause problems with. It was crazy back in those days, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember those days and parties getting broken up. Yeah, police showing up, units showing up. So all of that sounds fun. It reminds me of my childhood growing up too. But so what made you decide to then open your own business? So like what was the first major decision? Was it Fork You? Was it the personal chef services? What was your first uh your own cooking business?
Wow, that is what was my first cooking business. I wouldn't say it was 100% legit. It would be Pink Box Donuts.
Uh
So
ah
open
yeah,
pink,
tell us more about that.
open
And if
pink.
anyone is listening, if you're not from Vegas, Pink Box is one of the most popular donut spots in the valley.
Yeah, so Pink Box Donuts on Lake Mead, the very first one, and um, it didn't pan out the way it was supposed to pan out and everything, and that was my first um, with another partner, um, and of course now it is owned by a big corporation called the Siegel Group now. Um, that's what brought it, and of course when things didn't pan out, of course I can't speak, you know, um, in terms of everything that had happened and all
Hmm.
that stuff. It's the relationship is over. Um, you know, that was hard. It was a hard pill to swallow to walk away from that because you know that it has potential to become a multi-million-dollar company when you're living paycheck by paycheck and you have that, you're like, man, there's a possibility I can be a millionaire. You know what I mean? Off of this concept because the concept is legit and the brand is going to be huge. You see how huge
Hmm.
it is now. It's
Yeah.
everywhere. Um, yeah. So I mean, that was a hard pill to swallow. You know what I mean? I was as a partner owner. You don't really take a lot of money in, and I had to literally say, man, I'm used to taking X amount of money, and now I'm not taking any money. And what's more important, you know, um, my family or what my what I want to do. You know what I mean? And as a goal or whatnot, or you know, a passion, whatever. And sometimes you got to squash that passion because you got to take care of family. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
so I had to take care of my family first before that passion and what I really wanted to do. Because you know when you love your wife and you love your kids, uh, some people choose work before they choose that, right? And so I chose to make sure that they were fed and the roof was over their head first. So I had to walk
Yeah.
away from that.
I don't think
Um,
anyone would argue with choosing family first, right? Especially when it comes down to that. To that, are we going to be okay?
yeah, it's hard. I mean, when people don't understand the struggles when you first start something, right?
Hmm.
You think that it's just gravy. You're going to be making money right off the bat. You know what I mean? But then you got to pay your overhead. You got to pay the bills. You got to pay for product to come in and everything. Those are things that that's why I guess a lot of places say you got to have that liquid. You know,
Yeah.
um, that the money to back it up, for years, so that you're not digging into taking a loan out in your house, or you know eating peanut butter jelly sandwiches, and nothing wrong with eating peanut butter jelly sandwich every once in a while, you know what I mean?
But
But
not breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
yeah, not breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and definitely your kids can't go without clothes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean it's a really important point for people that are listening. Like entrepreneurship, you always gets this like glamorized view of like, oh, I've started my own business and now I make whatever. But one thing that people don't understand is for every entrepreneur that makes it, they probably had 9 or 10 ideas before that failed. And so, not saying that Pink Box was a failure because Pink Box is big, but the circumstances weren't right for you at the time. So at the time, you just didn't have the luxury to follow that path. And so, it's a great lesson in like, you just said it. You have to be ready. Like entrepreneurship's not easy. It takes a lot of work, especially if you have a family. Um, and you do need runway. You need at least because nobody, it's very rare for somebody to make $1 million the first year, right? Or
Yeah,
even be profitable the first year. It's really hard to do that.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, so it sounds like this is a lesson you took away. But what else? What else did that experience teach you?
Well, because of the walking away from that and having a partnership, downfall, you take away a part of you that you have to be guarded when you want to do something next. You
Mm,
know what I mean?
hmm
So, you know, um, I've had multiple offers on the table, and the funny part about it, I had a really really big offer from one of the largest profitable restaurant group in the United States, and of course they're located in one of them. Some of the restaurants are located here in Vegas. One of the partners, owners of the company, ended up branching out, making millions and millions of dollars, and starting his own group, and not only starting his own group, but taking over one of the best restaurants in Vegas. You know what I mean? Um, and when he starts his own group, I had an opportunity to come aboard, um, and I didn't come aboard because it wasn't my time.
hmm
And when you look at the kind of money that's involved in a deal like that, that also can make you millions and millions of dollars, you got to get lawyers involved. And so because in the contract wasn't in my favor, so
hmm
um, it it's maybe 5-7 years now that it's been up and running. Um, Maybe now I probably would have been okay. You know what I mean? I probably would have been like, oh yeah, you know what? That was a lot of that was a hard 5-7 years. You know what I mean? Of
Yeah.
grunting and grinding and whatnot. But at the time, you know, uh, having lawyers look at the paperwork, it wasn't for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's an important one too. Oh, we had someone on the show, Mark Matsuo, and he lost like $500,000 in a contract because he didn't have the right lawyers look at the paperwork.
It
And
definitely,
it's
the
important.
mental health of it is definitely depressing. You know what I mean?
hmm
When you have something that is in your palms, and to lose $500,000, I mean, I couldn't imagine that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So now fast forward, what was the impetus to start your own for Fork U and for Iron Rose?
I started small with that. I
hmm
started really really small with that because chefs always get asked all the time, "Hey, can you cook for me?" You know, if you know that if they know that you can actually bake as well. Hey, can you make a cake for me? Can you make cookies for me? Can you make you know uh, cupcakes? I mean, so by having knowledge and savory and the sweet end of it for myself, which a lot of chefs don't have both. They either have one, but not
hmm
both. I have both, so that makes it my repertoire in the culinary field even stronger. So I've always been asked to do stuff all the time. And the funny part about it is my dad never came out of pocket in any of his businesses. And he's had multi-million dollar bakeries, you know what I mean? And ran some big companies. He never came out of pocket. The one thing my father told me was, son, the experience that you have and the experience that I have, I've never ever came out of pocket. And he goes, you have an experience that a lot of people don't have. And people want chefs, people want bakers, and they're going to sit there and throw money at you if you're that good. And so um, I've had opportunities, lots of opportunities, and you know, either contracts or contracts with leasing agents. You know, the companies, you know, weren't in the favor. So because I've always been asked, you know, I would do catering on the side, and the catering every time that I would, you know, get a couple of thousands of dollars, you know, up doing an event for 20 people or you know 50 people or 100 people. What I started doing is I started taking some of that money and putting it towards equipment, putting it towards platters, putting it towards food, and building, you know, enough to store everything. And when every time I would go out, you know, I would do these events, and people loved it because I wasn't charging them crazy amount of money, but
Mm-hmm.
I was also, you know, doing a job that they would see that most restaurants couldn't even do. You know what I mean? You know, so that's how Iron Rose came about. You know, it was called Chef's Edible Sins when I first started, um, and then of course when the pandemic happened, we changed it to Iron Rose. And you know, there's a meaning behind Iron Rose. It's um, the I is for Ignacio, which is my last name. Ron, which would be Ron, is my father's name, so that's Iron.
Mm-hmm.
And then Rose, of course, is my mother's name. So
Nice.
that's
So
where
it's a
that.
nod to your parents.
Yeah. So not to my parents, yes.
Nice. And then when did you start Fork You?
Fork You, I started um, last June, and so it's been a year now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's it's definitely different. You know, a Fork You food truck, which is not necessarily a truck; it's a trailer. You know, um, it's actually more convenient than I would say a truck, because you know, if we could, you can unhitch it and take off in the car, you know what I mean, or the truck
Mm-hmm.
itself, you know what I mean.
Yep.
Whereas a food truck itself, um, you know, it puts a lot of wear and tear on the motors and all that stuff, and you always hear that there's, you know, a lot of breakdowns on the food truck itself. But it has the same amount of equipment, same amount of refrigerator, you know, same amount of storage and everything. Um, I started that a year ago, and it's like bringing what I started to do when I was 16 years old, washing dishes, cleaning the hoods, cleaning the grease out of the fryers, everything that you did when you started learning how to cook is what you have to do when you're on a food truck. Because
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, you know, in a restaurant, they pay people to wash the dishes. They pay a company to come in and clean the hoods. You know,
Yeah.
they pay a company to do all the deep cleaning when all the cooks leave at the end of the night. With a food truck, you
It's
literally
just
have
you.
to.
Yeah,
It's just
I
you,
had two
man.
food trucks too. Yeah, it's just you. At the end of every service, you got to clean that thing out
Yeah, you got to
and
clean.
transfer all your food, whatever's left.
Yeah, it's no joke. I mean, I remember you telling me that you had it back in the days and all that stuff. It's you know, the breakdown. The funny part about it is yesterday we did a party or an event. We get done, we clean everything up, all the equipment's off. The last thing is I do is I turn off the hood system, because you know how hot it is in the trucks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I leave the hood on. So that when I open up the door, I turn the hood off, because now it's all cool. Take off 20 minutes to get to the commissary. I open up the back. The whole ANSO system went off.
What?
Yeah, the whole ANSO system. And I'm
Oh.
like, okay, nothing caught on fire. All the equipment was off. The pin for the emergency to ignite the hood, it's not broken. why did the answer system go off? I was panicking. Like, what the heck?
Oh,
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's it's slushy. Like, it looks like ice is, like,
yeah. It's
all
like mini
over.
Orbeez all
Yeah,
over the
it's
place.
crazy. It's so hard to describe. And it's slippery. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
it actually, what do you call it? It makes your skin kind of irritated if you don't have gloves on and all that stuff. So, needless to say, um, that was an all night project to not only get cleaned up, but it's at the shop right now, getting serviced and getting recharged with
Yep.
the with that with the compressant, um, that they had to put in. So you know what it's like. It's
Yeah. We've
crazy.
had our own. That's even another podcast to talk about all the mishaps on a food truck, because it's basically a kitchen on wheels, and a kitchen itself has its own hazards. But now you put it on wheels and bouncing and moving and all those things with oil and, like, yeah, it's a whole nother thing. So in this business, is it just you? Like, who do you run this business with? Do you have employees? What does it look like for Iron Rose and for Fork U?
So, I run this business with my wife. Well, my wife is she actually never really been in the business. It's always worked admin, um, HR, um, admin for construction companies, whatnot. And this is her first, real go around in, um, running, a restaurant on wheels. You know what I mean? Myself too, right? So
Hmm.
that's my first time running a restaurant on wheels. And hey, if you can sit there and run a restaurant, you can run it on wheels. And to be honest with you, it's more like, if you can run a restaurant on wheels, then you should be able to run a restaurant. You know what I mean? I think it's opposite. It's not for the lighthearted. It's not for the weak.
Hmm.
You know, and I know, Vegas is definitely a different beast than, I think. Not to knock, the Bay Area where you were doing it and all that stuff, because I think you got a breeze from the ocean. You know what I
Yeah, it's
mean?
better weather for sure.
Better,
We
better,
never over 100 degrees.
so for us that are doing it in, like, Texas and Vegas, you know what I mean, or where it's muggy, like in Miami or whatnot in Florida. Um, when it's 100 out, it's like 130 in the truck. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And it's
it's
no
crazy.
joke. I literally spent a couple more $1,000 just to put a swamp cooler in my trailer, because it's being that hot. You know.
Yeah. So, um, tell us a little bit more about Fork U, because it started off as something different than what it is now. When we talked about before, it was more of a concept before, but now it's kind of settled into what it is now.
You know what? Yeah, I definitely could talk about it now. You know what I mean? I'm not working a corporate, executive chef job. So when I started this last year, I was already in year 6 of being the corporate executive chef for, a restaurant group here, um, with the restaurant group, with a restaurant in Miami, one in New York, and then of course, um, sister companies in Dubai and London, and Edinburgh. Um, so I was a corporate exec for the company, and I ended up doing my year 7 all the way until this last June and all that stuff. And, um, then the I had a bunch of different names, and one of the names that I came up with was called Fork U. And when you're corporate executive chef, a lot of people think that you do you say it's all on you. You know what I mean? Like, you get to say you're the number one person, that comes up with these dishes, or you come up with these ideas. But then you have other people that are on the board, or part of the corporate, that say yes and no. You know what I mean? And sometimes
Mm.
your idea is not 100% your idea. Sometimes it's them saying that you can do this. You know what I mean? Yes, of course, you're doing the cooking end of it and all that stuff, and you're creating the dishes and everything. But as a chef, you really want to sit there and say, you know what, this is what I want to put on the menu. You know what I mean? I want to put Sing Sing on the menu. You know what I mean? I want to put, you know, some special fish dish or whatever. If they say no, it's a no. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? They might not like it, and you're like in love with it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you get pushback, and not just me being corporate for the company for the 7 years. I was corporate for a lot of different places and executive chefs for some of the top restaurants. And there's always somebody that says no to something that you personally think that's going to do really well, or something that you did as a special, right? So I'd do specials, years and years of specials, and I would sit there and say, you know what, I'm not going to sit there and put this dish out because I don't want to show them, or maybe they don't know the recipe, so I'm not going to give them the 100% recipe. And so that's where Fork You came about. When I said, you know what, I want to do something on my own besides catering. I want to try to give the food truck business, a try.
Mm-hmm.
We came up with the name. My wife really loved the name, and she says, I like Fork You. And I didn't say, okay, Fork You, this is the reason why I came up with Fork You. I just liked the name. She liked the name. She liked the name better than I liked the name. And then my kids were like, oh, that's a great name. And so then I drew the logo out, and I think the first try that I did a logo, that was the logo, like perfect. You know what I mean? Let's go with it. And I didn't sit there and keep flipping the pages and have somebody, or my wife or my kids, say, hey, take a look at all these and tell me which one you like the best. Everybody liked Fork You before I liked Fork You. So then, of course, I liked it after they liked it. I drew the logo. Didn't have a bunch of different sketches of that logo. They liked the logo right off the bat, and it stuck. And then one day, I did an event, a catering event, and this business that I was doing, this catering event, works for UNLV, and they help fund small businesses or whatnot, and that has to give back to the community and everything. They said, Rodney, we want to introduce you to Rodney. He's a chef that's been cooking for you guys for the whole week. He's going to tell you a little bit about his business, and he also has another business that he's starting. And chef, if you can tell him a little bit about, your business. And so I explained Iron Rose, just like I said Iron
Mm-hmm.
Rose to you. And then I explained Fork You, and then somebody said, Fork You. So tell me, what is Fork You? And it stuck because it made sense. I sat there and told the group of 30 plus people that Fork You, how it was created and why it was created. And it was created because me being corporate executive chef for the longest time, I always got told what to do. Everybody else had a decision of something that I wanted to do, and it was never 100% my decision. So I created these dishes, and you know, it wasn't something that I wasn't going to put on the menu because they said no about it. So I kept it on the side, and Fork You was kind of saying like the F word. You know what I mean? That I'm going to do me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's where it came about. By doing the truck, I don't get 50 to 100 emails a day anymore. You know, I look at my emails to see if anybody's trying to get in contact with me now. You know what I mean? My wife handles all the emails and all that stuff for the business, but I don't have a bunch of emails anymore, and I don't have to answer to anybody besides my wife, because it's me and her.
Yeah.
So I'm doing me. That's where the name of this, comes about, is Fork You. You know,
Yeah. Love it. I mean, that's why I do what I do, because I don't have to answer. I answered to people for 22 years of my career. Now I don't have to answer to anyone.
it's hard. It's hard. It's really hard to walk away from a weekly paycheck, right?
Mm-hmm.
A good friend of mine that actually does producing for uh, music artists and all that stuff. And it's kind of like, um, he's a really well-to-do owner, and really known in the music industry. I did a party for him a few weeks ago, and he says, "Welcome to being an independent owner and not working for a corporation." And I said, "Do you have any advice for me?" And he says, "You know what, Rodney?" He goes, "I literally tried my whole career. One time he tried to work for somebody, and he goes, and it didn't work out. He goes, so I'd rather be independent." And he goes, "And I'd rather eat rocks before than to work for somebody else." And
Yeah.
and you know, of course, I've had Iron Rose for the longest time, but I'm not working for anybody else anymore. Just me and my wife now. So it kind of sticks with me now. You know what I mean? I'd rather eat rocks. You know what I mean? We're doing okay, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Fantastic. So now I want to transition this to uh, knowing what you know now, because there's a lot that people can learn from your journey, and hopefully they can rewind and listen to some of those things that you've learned along the way. But kind of succinctly, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to DJ Rodney or skater Rodney uh, coming up?
Definitely doing something that you really love to do. You know what I mean? What my wife has always told my kids when they're young and all that, when they were young, of course, all the kids are all out of the house. And my wife and I are empty nesters. Um, she always wanted them to get a job that they would like to do. Not just go, you know what, I'm going to go get a job at McDonald's or whatever. You know what I mean? If you're into fashion and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
you know, go get a job at you know a clothing store. You know what I mean? And if it's a certain type of clothing that you like to, if it's like, you know something that's like goth or whatever, go work there. You know what I mean? Or if it's like, yeah, you know what I mean?
Like
Or
Spencer's or
or if
something.
you're into, what do you
Yeah,
call it? If
Hot
you're into
Topic.
purses and all that stuff, go get a job at one of those purse stores or whatnot. You know what I mean? So um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's funny because the advice that I would say to myself when I was younger, it's kind of hard because um, I really love doing what I do. You know what I mean? And sometimes people make that change too, right? You go to college, you're like, I want to become a doctor. You finish a degree, and then you're like, I really don't like to do this. You know what I mean? You know, I really want to sell food now.
Mm-hmm.
But parents, especially Filipinos, right? Filipinos would be pissed off if they said you went to school to be a lawyer or a doctor and all this stuff, and now you're selling food and everything. You know what I mean? You know, now I'm the chef. No,
Yeah.
but you know what?
Now
I
you're a chef.
definitely have fun when you're younger. Definitely, try to put your hands into everything, um, and you'll find that love. You know what I mean? God, I think God has a plan of exactly
Mm-hmm.
like where you're gonna land, and where you're gonna be at. So for me, because I love doing art, that art got to be put into the food, right? So, um, and
Yeah.
and even in this industry, like I see a lot of chefs, I see a lot of cooks that really don't love doing what they do. You know what I mean? You know,
Yeah. Then yeah, absolutely. If you don't love what you do, you should stop doing it and find something that you do love. And it sounds privileged, but honestly, like, it's cliche for a
yeah,
reason. If you do what you
exactly.
love, like, the rest will work itself out. And I was talking with somebody the other day. It's our parents. the goal of parents are to provide us an opportunity to do better than, or as well as they did, right? And so by moving us and having us and bringing us into this world, they want us to do what we love too. Even though like I had the same parents were like, "Hey, you're going to be a nurse, a doctor, lawyer, and engineer." Like pick one of those. Man, I'm none of those. I ended up being like super creative, and I took the creative path. Um, but the one thing I always told them is like, you took a risk in coming to the United States with nothing to give us the opportunity to do what we love. So let us take advantage of that. Let us do what you came here for us to do. And, you know, as a parent, I would think you'd always want your kids to love what they do. And so you provide an environment for them to explore and have fun
Yeah.
and figure out what that is. So even as adults, we need to do that too. We need to look at ourselves and say, do I still love what I'm doing? And if not, what would I
Yeah,
love to
that's,
do
I
right
mean,
now?
definitely you hit that spot on, having parents that support what you want to do and support if you are undecided. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah. I mean, you're lucky too. You have parents that didn't follow the traditional path. Like you have a baker and a chef for your parents. I had the traditional. I had an engineer and a
well,
nurse.
here's the crazy
It
part
doesn't get
about it
any
is
more
my
Filipino
my
than
grandma
that.
and my dad's side were all doctors and nurses. You know what I mean? So I'm pretty sure he probably,
Yeah.
I wish he was here right now. But if I could sit there and talk to him, I wonder if that's something that was told to him. You know what I mean? Like you got to become a nurse. You know what I mean? I think it's because you
Hmm.
know um, I'm maybe more. And my dad was more of a black sheep. I knew that of him. You know what I mean? And I'm more the black sheep as well. The funny thing is, my
Hmm.
sister's a nurse. She's like a head charge nurse in California. You know what I mean? And then my brother's kids are all nurses, which is the crazy part about it is, you know what I mean? And maybe because maybe that part,
Yeah.
that genes in them, that literally, you know, they're used to being at one thing, or that's all they want to do. You know what I mean? Then there's people like myself and yourself, like
Hmm.
you're like the jack of all trades, like you DJ, you know what I mean? You're doing podcasts or whatnot, and
Yeah.
media, whatnot, and and cooking, you know what I mean? So like I, that was me too, like kind of undecided, you know what I mean? And I think that's the thing is what kids nowadays is, you know,
Hmm.
they get pressured into doing something that somebody else wants to do, you know what I mean? Or that's all they
Right.
know because that's what they see. You know what I mean? And for me,
Hmm.
it wasn't like here's a here's a baseball. You're only going to play baseball. You know what I mean? You know, my parents gave like here's a baseball, here's
Yeah.
a soccer ball, here's a football. You know what I mean? Here's a tennis ball. I had so many different things I was doing, and so when you ask me the younger self, when I was younger, I did everything. It was kind of hard to sit there and know what the heck I was doing. I was like into everything. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same. I played the clarinet. I was a drum major. Played the saxophone too. So, this was an amazing conversation, and I wanted to give people opportunity to taste your food. So, how can people get how will they can they get a taste of your food if they can't afford personal chef services? Where's Fork You? How do they find out where you're going to be? And then if they want to just reach out to you, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
So definitely look up www.forqfoodtruck.com. It'll tell you where we're located. If you're on Instagram, you can definitely find it on Instagram. Forky Food Truck. Um, my my daughter is does all the scheduling. She works. My wife books all the different areas where we go. You'll see a lot of corporate events and you'll see a lot of private events on there. And that's because, you know, the food truck is doing, a business with their employees. If you see that we're at a certain park or whatnot, of course, that's open to the public. And we try to, um, we definitely update it every month. So I have a whole month calendar. Um, if there's a cancellation, then we'll put a cancellation on there. If we add extra days, we'll put extra, an extra day on there. Um, the crazy part about it is, uh, there might be I might be busy for 4 days, but really I'm really busy for 7 days. You know what I mean? Because I have Iron Rose as well.
Right.
Um, and of course, I'm not corporate executive chef anymore, so I got to hustle more.
You got to
Um,
prep. Yeah, you don't have Sue's anymore.
I don't have Susan anymore. I'm not spoiled anymore. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yep, yep. The I remember the nights of like we were par frying the night before just to prep for the next service the next day.
yeah, yeah, the craziness. You know what I mean? You know,
Yeah.
I gotta go pick up my truck today and spend some time cleaning it. I know they're servicing it and everything, and I'm sure there's going to be not only footprints all over the place and all that stuff, and you know uh, tools or wires. I got to make sure that it's spot free. You know what I mean? So I'll spend
Hmm.
some hours tonight cleaning that because I have a late night event that was last minute at 10 o'clock. So yeah, I mean, anybody wanting to try Fork U, look up my Instagram, look up um, Facebook, look up um, Twitter or whatever it
Yeah.
is, So or definitely the website. We're always out right now. Of course, we were talking about Fork U and everything. We started out as Fork U rotating secret menu. Now it's Fork U Hawaiian street grinds. And the reason why I did a Hawaiian street grinds is because the first time we started it, I was doing Hawaiian food. It stuck. Everybody likes everybody that tries my Hawaiian food, they really love it. And the reason why I called it the Hawaiian street grinds is because I can do stuff like bows and I can do monosadas and I can sit there and do crispy rice, or I can do different types of pokes and stuff like that. Or if I wanted to do a ube burger with the tush, with tosan, tushan, there's so many different things I can do, and that's why I put that street grinds to it and not just Hawaiian grinds. So
Nice. You're making me hungry and it's about lunchtime. And we'll definitely, if you didn't catch all that, we'll definitely have all those links to all the social and everything in the show notes. So you can find Chef Rodney and his team out and about. Yeah. And thank you for taking the time to join us. Wish you all success, continued success with your business. And is there one more thing you'd want to say before we wrap up?
oh wow, one more thing before we wrap up. If you're gonna do this, you know what I mean. You're gonna, I think we talked about more so business and being independent and on your own. You're gonna do it. You just got to commit. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
know that there's at the end of the year or the end of the rainbow, wherever way you want to see it, things are gonna work out for the best. It's working out. It's doing well. You know what I mean? And don't give up. Don't get discouraged. Being you said it. A lot of people that start their own business and everything, they think they're going to be millionaires right off the bat. You know what I mean? And driving nice cars and whatnot, or whatever you want to call it. Living in a big house. Um, it's not that, but don't give up. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because too many people give up. They say that 1 year, right? It's most business owners give up, um, and I'm not trying to give up.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to give up.
My takeaway, love that point, and I love the do what you love. And my last takeaway would be, anything worth building is going to be hard, or else it wouldn't be worth it,
Yeah,
or else everyone would be doing it. Also,
you got to make the mistakes, right? You
yeah,
know,
you got to learn, and Yeah, you gotta just keep grinding. It'll be worth it in the end if you stick to it.
Yeah, I guess you can say that's where Fork You it makes it's a good ending to our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Fork You. I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna do what I want to do.
Absolutely. All right, all. Thank you again, Chef Ronnie, for taking the time to be with us.